This is the basketball show. What they gonna say next?
Well, hello, this is the basketball show, albeit a slightly different version due to the New South Wales lockdown. So I'm here in the studio. Hammer is at home, but we're still able to do the show. So a special thanks to TCL 2Co and News Corp for that. Hammer, how are you doing down there in the Shire?
Very well, thank you. All set up. Got a new shirt for you too, Joe. Buckets.
I was about to say, you clearly haven't been in the car to get one of your 3 rotating shirts that you normally wear.
It's still in the car. I'm in lockdown and ready to go in the tee. Free dress Friday.
Yeah, perfect. Love it. Well, the show must go on, obviously. So let's kick things off in the spotlight. Big congratulations to Melbourne United. They swept the series against Perth as expected. Hammer, that game 3 was pretty close though.
Well, it didn't start off that way, did it? I think Melbourne United got out to like 16 points in front, and you just thought, how much? But it was like they toyed with them a lot of the time. And then the fight from the Perth Wildcats, they never give up. Guys like Kevin White just kept fighting, and they hustled. They just didn't have the talent to be able to seriously compete against Melbourne United. But all credit to them to be able to make it happen. It wasn't one of the best grand final series we've ever seen as far as quality goes. And I'm looking forward to getting back to 3 imports next year. And I think it'll be bigger and better next season.
Most definitely. Jock Landale, finals MVP. Was he a worthy winner? Maybe someone like Bubbles unlucky to not get the nod?
Oh, I think it was pretty close, but Landale had a great season, didn't he? It was great to have him in the NBL. He's somebody that we probably didn't think was going to play here. We think he's got bigger things in the NBA to come, obviously about to go to the Olympics, but he was tremendous throughout the whole season and the best big man in the competition, no doubt about that.
Yeah, well, congratulations again to Melbourne United. Things keep moving, though. Free agency has just started. Some big names is still to be picked up. A big one pretty early doors, though. Ryan Broekhoff at the Phoenix. Great work on their part. Their roster, Hammer, is looking pretty good.
I think they've got the most stable roster that there is in the NBL right now. I think that the way they've laid the foundations with quality Australians, knowing they've still got 3 imports to be able to go is incredible. When you look at Broekhoff, Glidden, Creek, Adnam, Lafayette, Liafa, Tarangi, and Pinot,
yep.
Look at that. That really is impressive. And compared to some of the others, you look at Melbourne United, they've hardly got anybody signed. Same with the Perth Wildcats. I know Cairns have done a good job this week as well, locking in a couple of key players for their roster as well.
Well, Hammy, you mentioned United and Perth. So Perth have got Cotton, Blanchfield, Travers, United, Golding, White, Peatling, Illy, and Triplett, the DP. Not a lot locked in. Is that concerning for you?
It is concerning. And you have a look at the success over a long period of time for the Perth Wildcats, and you tip your hat to them. They laid the foundations with 6-7 guys every year that they were just locked in. They kept getting them signed. The basis of it, and they built from there. The Perth Wildcats don't have that now. The luxury they will have is if Bryce Cotton becomes naturalised and they've got 3 imports up their sleeve. But they certainly don't have the consistency of rolling out the same team year after year. And especially if Trevor Gleeson goes, then this could be a new look for the Perth Wildcats moving forward.
That's probably the biggest concern of all for me. But think about it. The Wildcats and United have both been playing grand final series. Surely they've been busy doing other things. They can now put their focus into free agency.
No, the players and the coaches do this. They're doing what they do while the agents and the general managers do their work. And the fact that these clubs haven't locked those players in during the season probably indicates that they're either going to have to pay a whole lot more money. They're not happy with the rosters they've got, and that's probably more Perth's side. They know they have to be able to get better players to their club to seriously compete again. But I think it's more of a worry for United. The fact that Mitch McCarron's not signed, they would have tried to sign him from the start of the season. He's obviously said no. We've speculated that it's probably Brisbane or Adelaide where he will probably go to. They know they're not going to have Landale back. So they don't have many players. They've got a big budget, so they're going to go buy players as soon as free agency starts. But a little bit of a concern for me that both those clubs don't have the same sort of foundation as what a Southeast Melbourne have right now.
Well, it's time for our TCL starting five. The Sydney Kings have signed their new coach, Chase Burford, leaving his previous role at the G League. Hammer, do you like this? How much do you know about Chase as a coach?
Well, I don't know much about him apart from seeing some of the YouTube stuff where he's gone off about the referees, but I do know about his dad, R.C. Buford. He picked me up at the airport when I signed with the Spurs, took me to the Riverwalk, had dinner. Obviously a legend in the NBA, and you would think that it's a smart appointment. Look forward to be able to see him work. And, Luke Longley, Chris Pongras and Andrew Bogut have been doing the recruiting, so he'll just coach the team that comes in.
Yeah, exactly. And by all reports, the Sydney Kings are really happy that he will be down under. So that's a great thing for them. It means that Cairns are now the only team without a coach for next season. How much of an impact will it have on them, given the fact that they're recruiting players and they've essentially got most of their roster apart from the imports sorted, but the coach is not going to have any impact on that recruitment?
Well, I don't think it really matters for Cairns because Cairns isn't a destination that's going to get a big-time player in free agency anyway. They've done a good job of signing their own free agents, which was the most important thing. And then obviously they need to be able to get their imports right. So I think when the coach comes in, he's going to be able to stamp his opinion based on what he needs, the style of whether they're going to be able to retain the imports that are currently signed and what new guys he brings in to be able to play the style that he wants.
All right, we touched on this last week. Ben Simmons looks now unlikely to be part of the Boomers squad in Tokyo. Do I even need to ask you whether that's surprising?
I think we went on record some time ago. I didn't want to be glass half full at that time, but I just didn't think that he was going to do it. Whether they went to the finals, whether they bombed out, it just doesn't seem that he's got the passion to play for Australia right now. Obviously, he's under a lot of pressure with the way he played and his free throws and everything else. So I think for him to get himself right, get back in the gym, try and create a new shot is the most important thing. A lot of people would think that it's good for him to go with the Boomers and be around great people. I agree with that as well. So it's a real balance of where he's at, but he needs to get in the lab very quick.
Yeah, definitely. It's obviously a shame, but you get the feeling, as you say, that unless he's fully bought in, it may be even more of a disturbance to the group in Tokyo. Some really cool pics coming out of the camp in LA, though. It's great to see the guys training and scrimmaging, almost whetting the appetite a little bit for the Olympics. Can you believe it? They're a month away as well.
Yeah, incredible stuff. And what a motivation we've already got with those guys that have been there before and the culture that's been done with and built over the years, but with Paddy and Joey and Baines and Daly seeing Glee back in as well. Exciting stuff. And, they'll be very much together. They'll play hard and they'll give themselves a chance to win that first ever. And I can't wait for it to all start.
Well, a couple of guys that won't be there. Ryan Broekhoff has pulled out due to mental health issues. We wish him all the best in terms of his recovery and dealing with that, a really brave thing to do. And then Isaac Humphries as well. So from an already depleted big man stock, essentially, they're even less now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one, isn't it? And both those guys were probably on the fringe. It was a flip of the coin, depending on how they trained, of whether they were going to make it. And, for Ryan Broekhoff to be able to pull out, you don't see him in that mental space. He needs that time with family back in Australia. Great that he's just signed and staying in Australia for the next couple of years. But I still think we've got the depth in those positions to be able to cover Ryan right now, particularly that he hadn't had a great season. So, guys like Green that will now get bigger opportunities to be able to play minutes. Thibault, obviously, as well, will be a good thing. It's more of a concern, as you say, though, Joe, that we just don't have a lot of depth in the front court. And I'm not sure that Humphrey would have made it, but it would have been nice for him to be there at camp to be able to get evaluated.
Yeah, exactly right. Aaron Baines has just joined the group as well. So obviously a big inclusion there and some competition in training for the other guys. Now, I just want to ask you about the NBL as well. And of course, you've got the WNBL campaign on the way. I know that you are glad that the season is done and you can have a little bit of R&R with the family, but I feel like it's going to ramp up again very, very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, this is unprecedented as far as this sort of time off that they're going to have. Normally they would have finished in March. they get a couple of months. Some guys go and play in all the state leagues and everything else, but they get a chance mentally to be able to recover a little bit and physically, and then get into a pre-season. It'd be completely different. Some guys might get 4 weeks off before they start the pre-season with the teams again. And so it's going to be different. Obviously, quarantines and things for, team and to bring Americans in and all the rest of it. So this will be started very quickly again. I'm excited because we've got the basketball show. So we'll be able to ramp up, and not much of an off season for us, but we need it, Joe.
No rest for the wicked.
Good stuff. Can't wait. Next year is going to be bigger and better. And, I think the NBL did a great job to be able to do what they could this year, considering the challenges were there and only a couple of imports, but it wasn't our best season for all of those things. And I think next year is going to be bigger and better, going to be really exciting to be able to regain the momentum that we had the season before.
It is time for In-Depth thanks to 2K, and it's a pleasure to bring in four-time NBL champion Greg Heier. Greg, hello to you. We'll definitely talk hoops in a moment, but really want to focus on mental health this week and all the great work that you're doing in that space. For anyone who perhaps doesn't know, can you explain a little bit about what you do, especially with A Stitch in Time?
Yeah, thanks, Joe and Hammer. In the last, 18 months since retiring from professional sports, had a real strong focus in really normalising the conversation around mental health, and specifically in sporting organisations. And so that's a ground of work, that's a body of work that's been started since 2014 when I launched a foundation, A Stitch in Time, whilst I was still playing professional basketball, just off my own sort of lived experience with a very close friend of mine trying to take their own life, and my brother being diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and obviously just wanting to have a bigger impact and space. And so, now retiring and having a bit more time and unspent energy, really trying to focus on what we can do as basketball clubs, as community members, to really normalise the conversation around mental health and help educate people on how they can manage their well-being.
Well, first of all, congratulations on the great work you're doing, mate. Very much needed. Ryan Brockhoff's come out this week saying that he's put his hand up, saying he needs a little bit of help. How important is it for key guys and key pro athletes to be able to do that, to be able to help the work that you're doing?
Oh, huge. I think, we saw that with Jock Landale open up about his battle during the season, but the previous year, Liz Cambridge is obviously quite a strong, powerful advocate in that regard. And then now you get Ryan Brockhoff. I think, it's a timely reminder, especially with the situation that we're currently in the world. As you would know this most, Hammer, it's, as an athlete, you understand part and parcel that you're going to get negative feedback, you're going to be judged, you're going to be in the public spotlight. But often what is forgotten about is that we don't really know that struggles that an individual will go with. And often not, that irrespective of that, whether we know that they are struggling, we don't really place the empathy that is required to allow people to sit with that. And so, we would know Ryan obviously would not be happy with how we play, and we don't know what he does. But I think it highlights, again, the importance of, being vulnerable. We don't see it with males generally as well. It's been really refreshing to see that. Refreshing to see a number of athletes reach out to me personally or others, knowing that there's a guy like Ryan, there's a guy like Jock, and others even in the NBL that are starting to really acknowledge their emotions and that understanding. I mean, you don't have to, an elite athlete places importance on mental health, irrespective if they're dealing with a mental health condition or not. So Brian doing this, hopefully it aids, juniors or seniors to also understand that they can be dealing with something and to be comfortable with that.
It's such a brave thing for Ryan to do, especially given the significance of the timing with the Boomers Olympic campaign. He's not the only one, as you mentioned, Jock. Nate Jawai is another one who admitted there were times where he wanted to quit the game. It sounds like he's been really lucky to have a good psychologist with him at the Wildcats and now at Cairns. Do you work with the NBL much, and do you think that the teams are doing enough to support the players?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, when I retired, I was part of the NBL player delegates, and a huge, I guess, part of that role was developing the CBA, and I placed a huge significance and priority on placing an importance on mental health and the transition of athletes, and being able to provide psychological support, anonymous psychological support, because I still think, even in the clubs, I remember meeting with the Wildcats. If you see a psychologist, it's sometimes seen as a hindrance. You're sort of queried whether are you a liability. So I think giving access to athletes across the NBL to know that they can reach out and seek out support is important, and that was what the CBA allowed to happen. I have worked closely with the NBL, especially during the NBL Hub, speaking with Jacob Holmes, Peter Gibbs, David Stiff. We ran a session during that NBL Hub to see what that looked like, and from all feedback, they were doing really well. And I think it's a very contrasting standpoint that you see the WNBL and the NBL. WNBL have had advocates, and they're really pushing forward. And why? Because mental health and females, they speak, they're open, that they don't feel like it's seen as a weakness, where unfortunately the male population does still see that. It's just that stigma and perception. And why I say this and articulate it is 9 lives a day are lost, unfortunately, to suicide. 6 of them are males, and that's because of the reason that we still have this perception you're seen as weak to be diagnosed with a mental health condition. So, look, I think we're changing. There's obviously momentum going towards that. Otherwise, Ryan would have never spoken up about that. For him to do that, and he's still going to be criticised. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. But we could see that generally there's an openness and acceptance that it's okay. So, yeah, look, I'll continue. I've reached out even in that time, hopefully to aid the development and see what that looks like, because I think what the NBL can do is really pioneer this. We don't see it even in the AFL. There's psychologists, but I think the more and more work that can be done at a grassroots level can obviously aid in terms of that all development, that education piece.
Well, the good work that you've done, mate, and others have actually put in the spotlight that we're actually having these conversations right now. So well done to you, and we know good things will come. I want to talk about the basketball side now. The Perth Wildcats, they've got 3 players contracted for next year. And I look back through all the glory days, the foundation that was set with guys like yourself and Damien and Jesse and all these guys. You had 6 or 7 guys that were always contracted that you sort of built from. This is a different time for the Wildcats.
Yeah, I'm nervous. I'm not going to lie. I've been texting guys like Nordo and even Jesse. I mean, I think he's a free agent, and other guys to see what the movements are. And especially, I think, you've got a brand new NBL club and the Jack Jumpers that would be, well, I'd think stupid not to throw marquee money at a guy like Nordo. And obviously there's conversations around the ownership structure and what that looks like and who comes in. And so there's a very interesting period of time, but yeah, definitely uneasiness from a guy that's played for so long for the club. And so, look, I hope obviously things can be consolidated quite soon. Mitch is the captain of the club moving forward. If Jesse comes back next year or if not, I still think there's a great opportunity to bring him in and give him a leadership role. But yeah, I mean, obviously you've still got Bryce and you've got LT, some real big staple pieces. But yeah, definitely hoping that there's a few signings in the next couple of days, seeing as well the great movement across the league already with re-signings.
Well, you mentioned the fact that the Cats are in the process of changing ownership. What about Trev Gleeson? There are reports that he won't be there next year. Can you just, I guess, describe the impact that he's had on the club in terms of that culture and the system that we always talk about?
Yeah, I mean, it's great that he got acknowledged for his Coach of the Year award this year. I mean, even me at the start of the season looking at that roster, I thought, geez, it's going to be tough for them to make the 4. And then, arguably, they would have been disappointed losing that game, that series and being swept. But to be put himself in a position, Trev's, he's got a system in place. And what he does have is he gets guys buying in, which is huge. That's why you've got a number of guys that arguably would not. I even myself know that I would have not been as successful at another club. I knew the system worked well for me, and if you can accept that role and that responsibility and embrace your strengths, you can do well and you can lead to team success. And that's what Trev does. He, he's grown in terms of he starts, the human side. Before, when he first got there was Trev. You couldn't really go into his office and have a yarn with him. He was a bit of a closed book, and that was his mantra: just go ahead. Whereas now you're seeing a different side of him, and as he's evolving, and that's what you need for coaches. And so, look, he's obviously a pivotal piece. I don't think he'll leave. Knowing Trev, he's obviously a smart man, and he's leveraging buy high. You couldn't buy high on Trev right now, so negotiate a new deal, and as he should, and the club should reward him with a brand new contract. But hopefully he doesn't leave.
Well, interesting that you don't think that he will, but new ownership, where do you see that going? What are you hearing, and how do you think that will go in Western Australia, considering it could be people coming from interstate?
Yeah, and that's, look, irrespective if you're interstate or overseas, I think the biggest thing is knowing, and this is a tough thing, like obviously someone coming in as an owner wants to make money, but that's the difference of Jack Bendat. Like, he wanted to make money, but realistically, if he lost $1 million or if he lost $5 million, it wasn't going to hurt his bank account. So, that's why he was able to leverage the opportunity when Bryce renegotiated his contract. He was able to renegotiate it and pay. If you want a guy like Will Magnay coming in the back end of the season who would have been costly, you've got a guy like Jack Bendat willing to do that. And so that is, I think, is going to be a very interesting time, is whether the new ownership group comes in and goes, yep, we are willing enough to spend. And for example, a case like Mitch Norton, will a team like the Jack Jumpers pay overs? Absolutely. There's not many marquee guys around. And would the club need to pay overs? Well, you're going to have to think about that. But that's the situation. I think, I don't think too many things would change, especially in the short term. But long term, it's an investment. And I think if you've got 13,000 fans, very, very loyal and passionate, who are very vocal. And so if you have an ownership group that's unfortunately already behind, if they come from over east, they're already behind, so I think you're going to have to cough up initially and not change too much. And why would you change too much with the results that they've had? So it'll be interesting times, that's for sure.
Shout out to the Red Army, definitely. Pardon me. Thank you so much, Greg, for joining us. It's been awesome to chat. Hopefully good things ahead for the Wildcats. It's hard to imagine that they could get on to even bigger and better things in the future. And congrats on everything that you're doing in the mental health space as well. It obviously is having a great impact, and I think everyone really appreciates it.
No, I appreciate it, guys. Thanks, Joe and Hammer.
Well, it is time for Points Made, and Derek's FOMO isn't too bad this week because, Hammer, you and I are not together in the studio. Dee, how are you doing up there in Brizzy after another Origin thumping? Let's be honest.
Oh, here we go. Take one for the Blues. Be happy down there, Joe. We give that to you guys out of sympathy for your current COVID lockdown.
Yeah, all right. All right, let's get into it. We've touched on free agency already, but I want to get your thoughts on a kind of pool of specific names. So Mitch McCarron and Mitch Norton are two that will be high on the agenda for a lot of teams. Which one would add more value in your opinion, Dee?
Wow, this is tough. Based on this past season and the championship winning Melbourne United outfit, you'd think Mitch McCarron would carry a lot of value because he did a very good job improving himself as a legitimate point guard in this league. But fit matters. And can he go anywhere and do that role? I'm not quite sure. But I think he's going to be a great add wherever he goes if he does decide to leave. Now, Mitch Norton, I think, should not leave at all. I think Perth is a perfect fit for him. He gets to play alongside Bryce Cotton. Not that he's going to lift your team into a championship contender on his own. He's going to add value, but I believe, Shane, that Mitch McCarron is the more valuable of the two.
Well, I can't believe that you think it's actually close. For me, it's not even a discussion. I like Mitch Norton. I think he's a good player. He's solid. He's shown that he's going to be really valuable on high profile and talented teams. He's a great defender. But McCarron's got so much more upside, and I think he will move. I don't disagree that Norton should stay in Perth. I think McCarron will go. You put him next to a Nathan Sobey, and you've got an opportunity to be able to really build a team to be able to compete for a championship. The thing for me is Mitch McCarron needs to take his offensive game to another level. I think he needs to show that he can hit shots consistently, put a few more points on the board. We know he's unselfish. He wants to be able to create. His assist-to-turnover ratio is off the charts, but I think he's got more to go to.
He's been super impressive this season. What about the big men? Isaac Humphries and Will Magnay are two that are up for grabs. Who would you be taking between those two, Hammer?
Well, you're splitting hairs, aren't you? And if you went on just current form, you'd say Humphries. I think he's had the better season. But if you went on speculating who's got the most upside, I think you'd go with Magnay. And I think that Magnay's a little bit more durable. We've seen that Humphries missed a good portion of the season. I think Magnay, with a full preseason, to be able to get himself set, we think he can block shots. I think his scoring can improve, and I think he can play a much bigger role than what we saw him play for the Perth Wildcats.
Wow, this is a tough one. Humphries, I thought early in the season, showed a side of his game that we didn't believe that existed, which is his defensive rim protection. He did a great job there for the Sixers. Offensively, he's quite talented, and this is a tough decision, Shane. But I think right now, neither guy really has much form. Magnay played a little bit at the end of the season, but he didn't show us much for the Wildcats. And I think we're seeing the effects of being over in America and not getting regular burn. We've seen it with Ryan Broekhoff. Now we've seen it with Will Magnay. Shane, I'm leaning right now on potential and youth. So I would probably have to say Will Magnay is slightly more valuable than Isaac Humphries on the free agent market.
Do you think both of them will be in the NBL next season?
Wow, that's tough. I think Humphries definitely will be. Magnay, I'm going to be not as confident, and I know he won't be in Brisbane.
I think they'll both be in the NBL, and I think they both need to be in the NBL to be able to consolidate themselves. Sometimes, as Derek said, you just need burn. You need to play. You need to build confidence to take your game to another level where you're actually dominating a league before you take that next step up to play internationally.
All right, let's go to NBA now, guys. There's been lots of talk around the whole Luka Doncic, Trae Young trade that was done when they were drafted. Based on what you've seen the last couple of years, and I guess more specifically this postseason with Trae Young, who would you be taking first? Hammer, I'll go to you first.
Wow. I mean, we've picked some really even sort of matchups, haven't we? But Trae Young has been unbelievably impressive this season, but also in the postseason. What he's able to do with the ball, the way he uses his pick and roll, the way he can finish for his size has always been underrated, and he's been able to come through. But like the trend has gone with, I'm going to keep going with Luka. I think his size makes him more difficult. I think his rebounding, his ability to be able to create for teammates. I think when you put better players around him, I think he's the most valuable of those two players. But it's amazing that we keep undervaluing Trae Young, what he's been able to do.
What's truly amazing is your double standard when it comes to Luka. You hate James Harden with a passion because he handles the ball so much. Luka has the ball in his hands more than James Harden did, and they basically are the same person. All right. I told you a couple of weeks ago that Trae Young was closing the gap. And Joe, don't you try and act like you weren't there that day, because you were right there with the cheer palms. Luka, Luka, Luka. No. Trae Young is the guy you want, Shane. He is going to be more durable. I'm worried about Luka's real age with his body. His body doesn't look good to me. And Shane, here's another thing. It happened with Deron Williams years ago with the great Jerry Sloan, and now it's happened with Rick Carlisle. They have decided to go elsewhere. And why would you leave a generational player like that, Shane? There must be something going on.
Can I just correct you too? It's not that he handles the ball so much. It's there's no D in Harden. He doesn't play D. You can't put Luka in that sort of category that he's like James Harden. Cut it out.
Wait a minute. When did Luka become such a great defensive player?
Didn't say he was, but he's no Harden.
Stop it. I see no difference. I see no difference between those two defensively. Luka, look, he doesn't make his teammates better. I don't care what anyone says. There's a whole
seriously
video link. There's a whole video link out there, Joe. Joe, you're too busy. You got you're busy. I have nothing to do, so I'm doing the research. Luka is not hitting his teammates. This is the problem, but we're glossing over it because everyone's infatuated with Luka.
I think this is something that we revisit next year. I want to give Luka another year just to see what he can do with a new coach. Hopefully they can get some new pieces in and I guess just that support for him. He doesn't find his teammates because he doesn't really have any right now.
Okay.
One for next year. Okay, we'll keep moving. Paul George has been obviously without Kawhi Leonard, leading the Clippers this postseason as a one-man band, essentially. Is he a legitimate number one star man, though?
Joe, you're killing us today with the questions. This is a tough one. He's right there, but then he does things like miss clutch free throws down the stretch, Shane. And that, you may have 38, 39 points, and then in a one-point game, you miss 2 free throws that leads to your team not taking the lead, and then the team comes down and scores. And this has happened throughout the playoffs. Look, in those final 4 games against the Jazz, when they went on that run and took that series, Paul George was outstanding. He averaged something like 32 points a game. And even in this series against Phoenix, he's been pretty solid. And this series, even though it's 3-1, the Clippers have done a pretty good job of keeping this thing close. Is Paul George your leading guy on a championship contender? No, but he can carry you for a series or 2. But I'm still conflicted, Shane. I just can't make up my mind about this guy.
Oh, I can make up my mind. There is no way that he is the number one guy on a team that seriously competes for a championship. There's no doubt he can be the number one guy on an NBA team and he can put up serious numbers. But he doesn't have guys that are following him saying he's our LeBron or he's our key guy that we're going to follow. He's not going to be able to get it done. I don't think he consistently comes through in the clutch. I don't think he has the toughness and the mindset to be able to do it. You brought up the free throws. He's done it in the last 2 games where he's missed clutch free throws to be able to get it done. He's not a Chris Paul. Chris Paul just gets there and he just knocks those things down. He's got the belief, wants the ball in his hands at the right time. And for me, he's just not somebody that's going to win a championship as a number one guy. He has to surround himself with other superstar players if he's going to get that championship.
Speaking of other superstar players, did you guys see the other day when Mike Breen was giving it to Kawhi in Game 4? He sort of said, the building is going off right now, and then they pan to Kawhi, and he's just literally deadpan. And Mike's like, he's going crazy. It was so good.
Kawhi is the coolest dude in the league. His emotional level is just chill all the way through. But hold on, Joe. Can I get back to Shane for a second with those last comments? Just 2 months ago, you were saying Utah was a championship contender, and then PG-13 leads a depleted team over the top of them. So I don't see how you could say that he can't lead a team to a championship by that.
Because they won in the first round. How's that? I said that he can lead a team, but not to a championship. And he's about to get knocked out again to a team that not many people thought were going to be able to win the Western Conference final. So, but the question I've got
who on this show predicted Phoenix would come out of the West, though?
Well, you did, and then you changed your mind. You went limp on us, and you said no, and then you went with somebody else. So you should have stuck with what you were at halfway through the season before you changed your mind, because you're on the right track. The Suns look great, and I love everything about the Suns. I love everything about Chris Paul, and you've been on that bandwagon too. I'm surprised you haven't beat your chest a little bit about Chris Paul.
Look, I'm still a bit wounded from the Melbourne United and Perth deal, but Joe, like you like to do, we're pushing that to next year until my man BC comes back. You know who BC is, right? The 3-time MVP, Joe.
Absolutely. Hey, I'm on the Phoenix train as well, and always would love to see BT do well, although I think it's nice to give somebody else an opportunity as well. Derek, as always, love your work. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, Joe. Talk to you soon, Hammer.
Well, that is all we've got time for, Hammer. It's been a little unorthodox, but we still have fun, haven't we?
We got it done. It's our turn for lockdown, so we're going to take it on the chin, but it won't stop the basketball show, Joe. We'll be back again next week.
Definitely not. It means that we need to give a special shout out to TCL 2K News Corp and also to Director Dave and Producer Logan for making this possible, given all the issues that we've had. You guys are champions. We love everything that you do. We'll see you all next week. Until then, be kind to yourself.
This is a co-production by News Corp Australia and Closer Sport.